Hello, everyone, and welcome to Staking Mondays. We are live. My name is Ken. I'm here with co-founder of Staking Rewards, Merkel Schmiedel, and today we have with us Thom Ivy of Edgeware DAO. So let's jump right into some lightning round questions. Tom, please be sure to answer these as short as possible. So what was your first investment outside of BTC and Ethereum?
What was then called Secret Network, which is like designed for privacy, computation, multi-party computation stuff.
That's beautiful. And what do you think is currently the most underrated crypto project?
I gotta say Polkadot on a both philosophical, architectural, and technological level.
And which alternative crypto inspired your work today?
Ooh, alternative working crypto. I would say Balaji, I'm gonna butcher his name, Servasian's concept of network states. Some of the privacy concerns and that were in Secret Network and persist in Monero, etc. And Other Internet, which is a really amazing think tank in crypto and research team.
Cool. And who do you think, or like, who inspired you the most in the crypto industry? Like, who do you really respect and you learned a lot from?
Mm-hmm. I would actually say Tor Baer, who now heads the Secret Network project. He was kind of my first mentor and was the first one to like show up in person, invite me to lunch, and like sit me down on a one-to-one basis. I think in person is very valuable.
Tor is a friend of Staking Mondays as well.
Mm.
And Tom, how much of your portfolio is staked?
Traditionally about 70%. Later on, I'll mention some recent news, particularly with Edgeware, which led to some liquidity being entering the system. So Nora, I got to go back and click the buttons again.
All right, that's exciting. And what is an activity you do to relax from the white crypto markets?
I actually produce and DJ house and electronic music. I'm from the Detroit area, so it's in the blood.
That's awesome. Really cool. And guys, stay with us. Today we'll talk about a new era of human collaboration. Will opt-in communities replace nation states? That's the big question of today. And ready to take it off for the long-form questions, Ken?
Yeah, let's hop right into it. So kind of a controversial question here. So in their current state, are DAOs a useful tool to achieve decentralization, or are they just a way of limiting liabilities for the founding team members of a project?
Ooh, we're going hard immediately. Love this. I think it depends on how they're structured. It's like not all DAOs are created equal. Yak Collective has a really amazing kind of like 2x2 grid, which sets up kind of how consensus is derived and the lore on which they ground themselves. So like an example of maybe a DAO with more decentralized lore today is like, and DAO, I'm using this term loosely, does a multi-sig with the chat room constituted? We're not really sure, but these like digital organizations more broadly, whether the automation is fully present, is Miladies, where anybody can kind of step in and produce lore, things that are canonical to the ecosystem. And so it's like fully decentralized in terms of the meaning making. And contrary to that, you've got maybe like more traditional type NFT projects like Forgotten Runes, in which is a centralized entity producing the lore that people then participate in certain degrees. So the answer is we're not really sure yet. I think on the most simple side, a high amount of kind of signers to a multi-sig with some other coordination mechanisms, preferably like pseudonymity, as Balaji refers to it, the pseudonymous economy. We'll take the liability stuff further. As far as it goes for like replacing a lot of our traditional entities, I think that there's a lot to figure out on the tooling side, and there's a lot to figure out on the philosophical side. Right now, my thesis is that they're most likely to take the place of almost religious institutions, churches, local communities of highly values aligned and oriented people who then want to pool their wealth in something that other internet, what I mentioned earlier, calls squad wealth.
Really cool. That's a great take. And like, so how do you think will like the future of work look like now that we have DAOs and work is structured in DAOs and people can just contribute? And it seems like the traditional world is still like living in the industrial age where like you work 9 to 5 and you have companies and like you clock in and clock out and whatever. And you have like very, very strict kind of rules. And now we're transitioning in the digital world and the metaverse and everything. And like there's so much happening. Like where do you think this goes in terms of like the working relationships of people with like their employers or their communities or DAOs or whatever? Like how do they contribute and how will the future of work look like in like the next 5 to 50 years or whatever? Maybe that's too far-fetched, but like even for the next 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is somewhere at the intersection of like autonomous practices, AI. We saw huge stuff happen in the AI space this month, even this past week, which seems to like rapidly endanger our conceptions of what design work looks like. So I think in the future, one of the main ways that people will contribute work and that what will constitute their working relationship with others is actually the contribution of potentially lore and capital. So as things become more automated, the funding to organize, to communicate, become more interesting, I think. I am concerned particularly about one trend in DAOs and the online workspace, which is atomization, social atomization, which is this idea that we are moving things from a relational system of you're in the village, somebody needs something fixed, so you put on the pants and you go do it because you don't need the money, necessarily, and maybe it comes with it, but it's because it needs to be done within a social group, to a more atomized, incentive and economically aligned system, which I think doesn't feel as good personally. So while I think in terms of like an open society and meritocratic, fair work economy, where people in India with the skills can do the same work that maybe we need done in the West, I think it's really good. There are going to be like no free lunch. There are going to be some social downsides to these systems, I think.
Very interesting thought there. And you think about today, companies and industry kind of rule the world. Do you think that a traditional company, how far away is a traditional company from turning into a DAO? And will communities actually replace companies in the future?
Absolutely not. What we found in Edgeware for the past 3 years is that flat hierarchies, and we've known this a little bit, there've been a lot of experiments of flat hierarchies for the past 10 years, a lot of them coming out of Silicon Valley, inspired by a vision of everyone having a kind of equal say. It's that they move slower, they're more difficult to come to consensus, they tap into all the problems that crypto originally had. And so I'm actually pretty bullish on hierarchical centralized entities for certain executions. I think what DAOs will do well is organize capital and assign it to centralized entities, who will then do the work and be accountable to that community.
Do you think there's a chance that DAOs or communities will ultimately replace like kind of nation states or something in that direction more, which is not that hierarchical like companies? Because most of the nation states are like democratic, and maybe there's a better fit there. Even like very small kind of groups of like, I mean, it could just be like a DAO buying an island and doing their own nation state or something, or it could start like that, for example.
So I live in the U.S., and I think what I think our government primarily does is collects taxes, appoints delegates, or we politically appoint delegates, and then they make decisions on what to do with those dollars. So in a lot of ways, the analogy is already very clear. The things that don't fully analogize for me are like geoterritorial security. Who's going to provide policing? Who's going to legitimize, quote unquote, the use of coercion and force upon a body? Who's going to protect your property? So in this way, I think DAOs that's the final boss, and we can imagine a kind of a dystopic situation where DAOs hire private security forces and mercenary-like entities. They get a hold of some new defense tech. I don't know if I want to live there quite yet, but I think some people in San Francisco might want to live there today. The thing that has to be solved before is that right now DAOs are aligned on, again, transactional and value-based relationships. We all partake in a common token. We'd all like that to do well. We've all got time and potentially money and attention invested in this thing. Whereas I think nation states have the concept of a national idea, something that unites everybody in what it means to be X. So the thing that DAOs and lack today is they're great at lifestyle groups, friends with benefits. Edgeware in some ways trying to make this transition from something that's, well, we're a smart contract platform, to we exist to further X vision and manifest that in the world and to defend that position. America's concept has always been kind of like the protector and bringer of democracy, for better or for worse. So there are a lot of things in the way: geoterritorial security, the concept of a national idea, but in a lot of ways, the ability to collect revenue, to decide what to do with it, and to do so at large scales is well within the reach of DAOs in my mind.
And just one comment, like, because in the metaverse, there's not really like a geopolitical like security or anything, right? It's just the metaverse is just digital. So in there, it would actually be way less of a hurdle for like a digital nation state, something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, validation and mining, these are the things that secure the network. They provide the cryptoeconomic security guarantees. So, under the Polkadot model, Gavin Wood says that the relay chain is the United Nations, and its parachains are member states, and they pool their funds to reduce the cost, i.e. inflation, the things that they use to pay the security providers, validators, and to improve their security. So it's kind of win-win in this model, which is, again, why I'm really bullish on Substrate and Polkadot in general.
And with the current function you mentioned, DAOs are really good at just collecting value and distributing to maybe a central entity that further makes decisions with that capital. How do you think the function of DAOs will evolve over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of the tooling will have to focus on kind of like the accounting, the work of checking in on the thing that they've contracted out, measuring the performance of their dollars. I talked to a lot of teams in the past 2 months that are saying, hey, we want to provide accounting tools, automated payments and assessment tools for DAOs. So that's, I think within 2 to 3 years, we'll have some very solid tools here. Governance tools also need to evolve. We're playing around with different voting and tally types in Edgeware that help us come to more accurate consensus, whether this is like liquid democracy, where you can delegate your vote to an expert, whether you want to do ranked choice, which is currently under experimentation for like New York, California, Colorado, the quadratic voting method, in which you get kind of like vote credits and you can spend them unequally to have different impact on certain issues. That's really interesting for me because it I think is one of the ways in which we more perfect democracy by mapping the impact of policies to those with the greatest voice. The most impact, greatest voice, keeping that more proportional, I think is exciting. Other than that, yeah, I think we're going to see the evolution of these like national ideas come to DAOs with a lot of lore. Other internet writes about this, and a lot of a conception of like living an alternative life, whether it's pseudonymous or not, that allows you to feel kind of like, I think maybe a short-term analogy is actually like fraternal orders. So in the US, we used to have like the Elks Lodge. Oh, that's still around. Or Fraternal Order of Moose. In Europe, there's these like Lions Club type things of like long families, long social interactions that focus on values, philanthropy, moral development of their people, so on and so forth. So I think that's the short-term vision for me.
What do you think like is the biggest, like most underexplored use case for DAOs still? Like, of course, right now it's primarily like capital allocation. And then apart from that, so like, do you think that will be the primary use case for the coming 5 years as well? Like capital allocation kind of, or like, what about like the social aspects? And like you also mentioned the national ideas and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to the point about fraternal orders in the short term, while we figure out how to get people to accept, these monies, which limits who we can contract out to, I think the focus will be specifically on virtual goods. So this is NFTs, zero cost reproduction goods like gaming assets, books, media. This whole ecosystem is a space in which, because they don't have to interact with the external too much, they can just accept crypto between themselves, and only when they need to pay the rent or do something else. So I think the target and the strategy is, let's get these things on board first. They help produce the lore and the further media to onboard and convince non-crypto entities. And then once they've got this going, they can focus on the social welfare. They can get backing in their treasury. They can contain maybe derivatives of other assets, stable coins, etc., reserve currencies like Bitcoin. And then once that's done, they need to continue to bootstrap and make investments both into the welfare of their members as well as their ecosystem. So for us in Edgeware, this is called EdgePass, and we've previously funded a podcast, the Gotta Make It in Crypto Media podcast by a really talented journalist named June. We've got the NFT minting curation platform called New Futures, which is a way for people to talk about culture and art as a media platform and to launch those easily. We've got Kabocha, which will focus on media funding in a kind of couple new innovative ways. So our playbook right now is to say, let's do culture, then let's do social benefits and welfare, and then let's scale up from there. And what that looks like after, we're not totally sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of projects playbook is around culture right now in the current time frame. But put yourself back 2 years ago, let's say pre-COVID times. what's something that played out over those 2 years that you didn't expect within crypto and DAOs?
That I did not expect. I mean, I don't think anybody would have foreseen NFTs as they've become. A lot of people, and the reason is that we just didn't really have this like psychological primitive where we had to focus on the metadata or almost the securitization. Like people say, oh, you just buy this ape for $1 million, and what they don't realize is the ape is just the representation of the thing, and the thing itself is an underlying concept of value which can be securitized and plugged into these automated systems. So it's really actually a very functional play, and it's one that for me is more expressive than the prior kind of big hit in crypto, which was Bitcoin and Ethereum, because they allow people to express their own values aesthetically and otherwise, and to run these social games. So in the future, based on the past two years, I would say Bitcoin better watch out for NFTs. I think that they're not done growing. They're extremely scarce. As Bitcoin has started to look more like a traditional asset in terms of playing along with the rest of the market. So I would say, yeah, NFTs remain the thing that I totally did not predict.
Yeah, fully agree. And I also think NFTs are still so underexplored. Way overexplored is like the JPEGs and stuff, but underexplored in like so many other use cases. So it remains interesting. You mentioned before like quadratic voting for DAOs. So like, how do you think will DAO governance evolve over the coming years? Because obviously, like, it's not an optimal model right now. It's like one vote, or like one token, one vote. And what are the different kind of ideas you see circulating around, and how do you think will that evolve over time?
Mm-hmm. I think expecting everyone to participate in governance, and this is one of the problems with like a truly flat, hierarchy, is unlikely. People don't do it today with traditional assets. If you're, a holder of some stock, it's unlikely that you're on every call. It's unlikely that you're, participating fully. So delegating, I think, is the first thing that we can do. On Edgeware, we support delegation of trees 5 deep, and this is a fact of all substrate chains. This includes Kusama, Polkadot, so on and so forth. So you can delegate to somebody that you know, and then they can redelegate to an expert that they know up to like 4 or 5 times. And so this is interesting to me because it preserves information about how expertise moves within a network. And it reduces the amount of targeting potentially that you have to do in the long term. Instead of onboarding 2,000, 15,000, 20,000 people to some choice, you can target 200 or less. One concept that I think is that I recently heard about that I hadn't thought about is the inflation of a delegate pool. The idea that a single delegate can only accurately map to the wills or interests of so many people. In the US, for instance, we have so many delegates in our chambers of our legislature per representative or per senator, but our population has grown. So their ability to accurately map to that wider and wider group of people has decreased. So there's a movement here to actually increase the number of delegates so that we can improve the fidelity of that system. So I don't think liquid democracy or quadratic voting is the only solution. We're going to need to combine multiple things and to run these experiments to see which tallying and voting types, whether it's one person, one vote, whether it's token voting, the corporate kind of shareholder style, applies to which issues. What is exciting about the highly legible and explicit digital systems that we are running now is we can run experiments in $2 billion economies with these technologies and automatedly kind of like chew them up and come to conclusions. One of my favorite projects in this space is Gauntlet. They're basically designing, and this is going to be very, very metaphorical, low fidelity metaphor, but they're basically, launching a kind of artificial intelligence model that's eating up all of the financial chains data and their government decisions, so as to predict, hey, we noticed that this is happening in your stablecoin or whatever. We recommend that you propose this and that you vote on this. So automating governance, I think, is actually one of the most exciting things for the future, that we only recently have the data model, data volume to really consider in the past 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, very interesting stuff there. And for all the people commenting in the chat here, keep those questions coming. We'll ask those in the end of the episode here during the community question section. Thom, I'm thinking about participation in proposals within DAOs. We had a guest on last week that was boasting that their most recent proposal had a 98% voter turnout. And I'm thinking back to the conversation, and there might have been some, incentive for people to vote, but it was definitely a controversial proposal to begin with. So I think that's really what caused the high turnout. But if you look back, they've actually consistently had above 70% participation in all their proposals. So what, in your mind, should DAOs do to incentivize voter participation?
Mm-hmm. The best thing that they can do is to have a national idea or something that's a deeply held value that they feel like they are utterly failing if they are not ready and participating. That's the best thing that a DAO can do, value alignment. The second best thing you can do is UX and UI, making it easy to do so, and to see who's not doing so, which helps us engage the natural desire for human status. One of the things that I think is true with these systems, even if they are explicitly a flat hierarchy, they're never implicitly a flat hierarchy. There's always some social status which starts to occupy and kind of grow like moss on these, on these bones. So allowing people to play status games, trying to convert them to things that people want to do. One of the ways that we do this or propose to do this is by giving NFTs or certain benefits to people who are consistently engaged in governance, in staking. If you're providing network security, if you're ensuring that our governance is strong, you're going to get the badge, or you're going to get the future access to some sort of benefits that the badge will unlock. I'm the one thing I am not super happy about is direct financial incentive for voting. I think it's very easily gamed. It creates, again, a slip from a values-based alignment to a value-based alignment. Anytime something goes from a relational to transactional, my warning signs go off.
All right, and this is a controversial question. Like, do you find DAOs lack accountability in the team or like in the project in general? Because obviously it's like, contributors are way more like contributing with their heart kind of, but there's lacking like the real like accountability, right?
Yeah, so it depends on the use case. We have a team and I don't think I'm at liberty to speak about this. We have a team that's based or has some members in Iran. And so when they approached our chain for funding, I'm like, oh gosh, can I even talk to these folks? So for some things where you need resilience, censorship resistant in the face of sovereignty, I think that pseudonymity and these delegated kind of giant multi-sigs on-chain treasuries, et cetera, provide some useful tooling in terms of enforcing the freedom to transact, which I think is a new concept for maybe some people that listen to the podcast. Definitely look it up. It is the freedom that we implicitly know, but in the modern world typically underlies all of our other rights. So the freedom to communicate, the freedom to bear arms potentially if you're in the West, the freedom to associate, to pay for gas to get into your car, to buy the train ticket, to afford internet so that you can communicate, to afford your phone so that you can communicate. Freedom to transact, I think, underlies a lot of this. So the liability protections that come with DAOs are best when these are under threat. But I think for particular kinds of execution, if you're actually pursuing like an investment vehicle or a security token, you're going to want to have your team doxed. I think it's going to show commitment. It's going to be more interesting and have better lore. People are going to be able to relate and say, wow, there's this powerful guy named Vitalik Buterin, at the top, who's personally fascinating to me. So I think there's going to be advantages for teams doing traditional venture activity, not to pursue a fully DAO model. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting to think about. And more of a general question here. So what do you think is the biggest challenge ahead, and how can DAOs face this to truly take off? Is there like one event that you see occurring that would allow for DAOs to truly take off?
Yep. I think that, in the long term, the competition with the nation state and some of the things that Bitcoin was intended to do, and some of these like privacy coins will attempt to do, is to create a sovereign economic bubble that the existing governments are going to really want to get their fingers in. So privacy is the next thing that we need to solve. All of crypto and the things we've created have happened within an adversarial environment. It's safe to presume that environment will continue, and we need to keep our brightest, most committed thinkers on that edge. The crypto punks in the 90s, fought to even have encryption algorithms on their computers and to travel about. The fight is not done. So creating a more voluntary and secure private way to conduct our freedom to transact and the rights of association is the forefront for my mind for DAOs.
Cool, that makes sense. And like, can you actually imagine, or like what do you think would be the concepts of DAOs that companies could adopt to like really match like the best of both models, like of traditional company structure and DAOs? Like, what could companies learn from DAOs, you think?
Mhm. I think that they can benefit by looking at the relational structures that DAOs have been using. In Edgeware, a couple of years ago, we pioneered a shift away from an ambassador, which is like a financially incentivized, we'll give you tokens to go out and do XYZ in the communities, to a more relational working group model. So we said, what are your interests and what are your passions? How can we fund you and 10 of your friends also interested in this to go out and solve this problem? So more project-based social alignment working groups can be adopted by corporations, not merely like business sub entities or something, where they're directly financially incentivized, but that they are invested in by the company to explore certain things. I think they're going to find that they've got better commitment, higher employee welfare, that we have a stronger, better society with higher level of fulfillment and values alignment. In 2 words.
Cool. That makes sense. And then speaking a bit about Edgeware, like what role does Edgeware play in the world of DAOs in the next 5 years?
I think we're interested in expanding into more like venture funding. So I guess what I mean by that, to clarify, is like we're currently experimenting with diversification of our treasury funds into other crypto assets that align with our sustainability needs. If our token were to not do so well for a little bit of time, we want to make sure that we can continue to pay our operators, like myself and some of the people that work with me. But also, we want to be able to invest in teams looking to build on us, so that we have governance alignment on both sides. They're coming onto us, they're taking a risk, we're giving them tokens, and potentially taking some of theirs when they launch them, doing a token swap. I just lost my train of thought. The space that Edgeware I think will occupy is continuing to run experiments to try and bring more of the relational into the digital. The pendulum, I think, has swung a little bit too far. Friends with Benefits is a good example of a team that does a lot more in person. They're focused on in-person events. Praxis Society, I'm very interested in. They've just started a round with, or just finished a round with Paradigm, and they're looking at doing a special economic zone in the Mediterranean, and launching a token as well. So it'll be curious to see how their experiments go. Giving people, places outside of the metaverse to really figure out who they are and how they align and what their lifestyles are. Because in the long term, if we want to compete with nation states, this is something we're going to solve for.
And Thom, an opportunity to pump up your own tires here for the Edgeware DAO. So what are you most proud of in the organization of Edgeware?
Honestly, it is the sheer commitment of our longest term members. When things are down, when bear markets hit, it's the guys who are still showing up, or people still showing up every day, coming with ideas, even if it's just 5 to 10 of us. It has been a joy and an honor to continue to be able to inspire and coordinate this team. I'm so excited to see where they go in the future. In the past 3 years, we've seen people come from zero information about DAOs and crypto to being able to coordinate, as I do, even faster, and to talk about the tech, the community, the whatever. So for me, crypto is less about the products in the near term, and actually more of a model for coordinating funding and capital and talent for the next generation of crypto, which we know accelerates and accelerates and accelerates. I invest in people personally, not products.
That makes sense. Yeah. And where do you think can users find the best alpha in the Edgeware or like wider Polkadot ecosystem?
I mean, to toot our own horn, we've been supporting the launch of a new Kusama parachain called Kabocha. They entered parathread status today and will be launching their crowdfund soon. If you hold EDG or if you contribute KSM, you will be getting a 1-to-1 airdrop of Kabocha on the front end, and then a proportional amount for the KSM in traditional crowd loan ways. So I would say definitely take a look at that. I'm super excited about the inflation/funding experiments they're going to be running, and their focus on media and the development of like public wealth in terms of culture and media, like we talked about previously. As well, in Edgeware, I think the substrate ecosystem is still very new. The smart contracting language Inc. is still under development by Parity and related folks. We're seeing EVM kind of get polished up by several teams, including on Edgeware. We're launching robust EVM in the next like two months or so. So I focus mostly on Edgeware and Edgeware related teams. New Futures, Zine, which is a WhatsApp integrated NFT airdrop that like curates highly avant-garde set of artists. The intersection of art and technology, but just any place where people are taking extreme risks with a high standard of aesthetic and avant-garde is what I'm mostly interested in, and we're lucky enough to have just a few of these. And in my mind, that's all it takes.
Hope the audience was paying close attention to that. Definitely dropping some alpha right there. Thank you, Thom. And any other announcements that you want to sort of share with us today on the show?
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, Binance released about 7.5 to 10% of our total supply. If you held ETH on Binance during that time in our lock drop, which is about a little over 2 years ago now, you may actually already own Edge. They basically signaled all of their hot wallets ETH on behalf of their holders. That distribution happened. I would say get it off there if you find it. Get it onto a wallet like Nova or Polkadot apps. Start staking. We've got like a 15 to 17.5% staking rate currently, even higher if you decide to validate. Separate from that, we've got that Kabocha airdrop, where if you hold EDG or contribute KSM, you'll have a Kusama Para chain coming up soon. Third, I'm wrapping up the funding for a top 5 exchange that I'm super excited about. I can't give you more details under NDA. I'm just the representative kind of liaisoning between, but I'm really looking forward to this. And it's been cool to see how chains can, in a decentralized way, fund integrations with these centralized corporations.
That's amazing. Really, really nice. And guys, keep it coming, like in the chat here. If you have any questions, we are moving over to the community questions now. The first question from Benedict is like, who will be a DAO first? The Bill Gates Foundation, FC Barcelona, a family treasury, or the local tennis club?
Amazing question. I think that it's going to be a family treasury. The ability, one of the core things about crypto is democratizing tools and abilities that prior were only available to the very wealthy. So that's investment, these are derivatives, the ability to launch, all this stuff, but also to have a family office type run where you maybe automate your legal proceedings like they're doing in California right now with these bots that can fight parking tickets for you. So again, the integration and automation of all these different fields and then the provision of capital to fund their activities and the family treasury style would be a major win. I would love to live in that world. That is not dystopic whatsoever. Who do I think will be a DAO first in the short term out of similars in that list? Probably groups like A16Z, who have expanded really quickly and who have all the incentive in the world to try and perfect this tooling so as to get their bags ready in the fight with other VCs who are trying to encroach. They both have the intelligence, capital, and expertise in this particular field to run that.
So do you think like they will actually like open for like outside contributors as well? Or like, I mean, it totally makes sense for the capital allocation part, but DAOs are also like everyone can openly contribute and like they're very transparent in everything that they do and so on. Do you think that matches for someone like a VC firm or yeah?
I think it comes down to how they think about token distributions and governance rights. They can integrate with things like Idea Market, which is exploring kind of open and decentralized ways of curating information and these like information vetting kind of systems. Idea Market's not a pure like vetting system. Definitely look into it. Very cool team. Or they could say, we're eventually going to launch an A16Z token. It will initially go to our staff and LPs. And then from there, they'll have the opportunity to buy in later. But yeah, managing the information flow is something that I think they're getting very good at. And we know this to be true because they've grown so much in their numbers. There was a joke for a while. It was like, everybody's becoming an A16Z partner or member or expert. So we'll see where it goes. That's my intuition. I don't have any insight on that. I'm just riffing.
Cool. Okay. So it's not some inside information or anything like that. Okay.
Nope.
And so COVID was an event that kind of legitimized remote work. I'm sure all of us here are remotely working now. for traditional companies, right? But what event would legitimize DAOs as a form of governance? Do you think it has to do with freedom of transactions, maybe?
I do. Yeah. Again, like the narratives of crypto excel during times of crisis. So Bitcoin for Croatia, for the South American like high inflation systems, it is when there is an immense need that people wake up and say, okay, I should probably be taking this seriously. They also took it seriously with NFTs, and I think that remains to be seen how this connects to adversarial stuff. But I'm fully confident that the form will be used.
Awesome. And we have another question here from Dude Guy. Why betting on Polkadot was a secret network? I guess that's because you mentioned secret network in the beginning and Tobert. So I'm not sure if you can even build on a secret network. But yeah, what's your take on that? Maybe like expand it to like the entire Cosmos ecosystem where secret network is built upon.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. So when I was originally aware of Secret Network, I think they were doing a custom chain. They eventually moved to Cosmos SDK. They had also looked at Substrate. Why Polkadot versus Secret Network, or why Polkadot versus the Cosmos SDK? Different philosophy around scalability, interoperability, and architecture. If we have this semi-hierarchical relay chain, parachain model where security costs filter up as well as some value accrues to the top, you negotiate one treaty with the UN and you get diplomatic and transactional access to all these other chains. In Cosmos, there is no UN. It is you get to negotiate your treaties individually. You also get to retain your validator set and provide your own security. So in this sense, Cosmos focuses more on sovereignty, and Polkadot says for business use cases and dApps, we think that people will find this trade-off economical and effective. So why build on Polkadot for me? I would say back when I was getting into crypto, I just left to run for state legislature in the state of Michigan here in the US. I was really confused by the corruption that was present. And I met a team that was working with Gavin Wood, the lead of Parity Technologies and one of the heads, behind Polkadot. And his ideas, which is very, very much resonated with me. So I would say, why did I go to Polkadot and Substrate? Because of the value alignment, not merely the technology.
Yeah, definitely good to hear. And from Oplantis One here, what is the best advantage of Edgeware?
One of the, I'll call it a secret advantage, because I don't think a lot of people know about this, but our token distribution, the lock drop, where we basically said you can lock up ETH for a certain amount of time, you can do it earlier, and you can do it longer or for more, allows people to compete with whales for the new token instead of the ICO model, which was kind of like one-to-one, reiterating wealth disparities in new systems. What this produced, though, was a first vision of a fair launch in which no VC could hop in at a lower price. Everyone paid the same opportunity cost outside of those three parameters. So what we have is a credibly VC neutral total utility token due to the decentralized launch that we pioneered. So the secret advantage for Edgeware and why Kabocha is launching through our playbook is that it creates I'm not a legal expert, so I can't say this, and we've never, been approached by any legal entities, but we have opinions that what we have is a strong utility token case that avoids securities laws, which is decentralizedly owned and managed, that no VC has an advantage in. The last thing that you want in some of these investment ecosystems is for one VC to be caught holding the other's bags. That cannot happen in Edgeware. So it creates an ecosystem for high collaboration between very powerful entities and funders.
That's beautiful. And the last question here from First Coast Crypto: are you guys hiring? Are you looking for a business development or partnerships manager?
So here's the beautiful thing about a decentralized ecosystem is that we're hiring when we hire you. You can come on to our governance portal, commonwealth.im. You can propose a business plan. You can negotiate it with our community. And then they will decide via these votes in this democracy system whether to hire you. I highly encourage people that want to participate in Substrate, that want to move forward on digital democracy and stuff to hop in, see what the proposals look like. There's plenty of prior use cases to examine, and feel free to message me if you have further questions.
Awesome. And thank you to all the community that submitted their questions today. And thank you, Thom, for coming on here. So how can people follow you to learn more about the stuff you're working on?
Yeah, my Twitter is actually great. And then we have 5 meetings a week in Edgeware that anyone is welcome to drop into through our Discord. Very easy to find through our events page there.
Cool. Be sure to check that out. And for everyone watching, be sure to check out previous episodes of Staking Mondays available on YouTube and Spotify. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure to give a like and turn on that notification button. So as always, guys, happy staking. Take care until next time. See you, Mirko. See you, Thom.